Hi everyone, this video is a how-to video, how to make a beautiful mosaic such as this one, which starts with using a beautiful piece of unique crystal as a focal point in a mosaic, as a primary element, and then around it you can build some other materials to create a beautiful work of art. So this one is Moroccan blush amethyst, but over here you can see this is our current selection of crystals that could also be used for something like this at Artopia. Our stock comes and goes so rapidly, so check in with us, particularly on our Facebook group, which is Artopia Inspiration and Shopping, to see what we currently have available when you're watching this video. And then you can watch the rest of the video and have a go at doing something like this yourself. It's so much fun. Today I want to talk about focal points. As a base for a mosaic, you can really pick a piece of beautiful crystal. I've chosen this amethyst blush from Morocco as the centerpiece for a mosaic, just because I want to make a small work and I love this piece of crystal. So what do I do next? Well, I can actually I base my whole mosaic around that piece of crystal by working with andamento, which is the flow. So I can have a flow that follows this beautiful shape and build from there. But how do I do that and what do I do next? Well, what I do, and some of you may do this too and might try it, is I go through my stash and I find other things that might look nice with this piece, color-wise, and also might just work well with texture and contrast and kind of feel like they're in the same family. So what I've just chosen, I've gone through my Smalty stash, and I think I actually like the black Smalty up against the mauvey crystal. I also have these Mexican Smalties with this mottled pattern on it in like a purpley pink and this one, which I think might work with that too. I've picked out some black obsidian, which we have here at Artopia, and I think that will also look nice. I've picked out some pieces of lepidolite, which are gorgeous, and Super 7 crystals, and some amethyst crystal chips. And that's what I'm going to try to build my andamento with. So we have all these items except the Smalty at Artopia Spirit, so you can just contact me if you're interested in working with me in this way and helping you select some materials to go with a focal point that you might have in your stash. I'll get working on this and then I'll show you a little bit down the line what I've done. So as you can see, I've started to run a line of Smalty around the crystal piece, just working with andamento and getting that nice flow happening. I'm liking the Mexican Smalty. And I'm kind of tucking these pieces underneath a little bit, underneath the crystal, just to give it that interest that something's disappearing underneath there, and keeping that in a nice alignment. So I did initially think I was going to do a full ring of Smalty around this piece of crystal, but as I've got all my materials around me, sometimes I just pick them up and play and see what happens. And I just feel that that one clunks in so beautifully there, that piece of obsidian. It's so perfect that I just have to put it there. So that's sort of what you can do with these natural materials. You can move them around and see where you think they, intuitively might go. And I feel like that one follows the andamento too. So I might pop that piece of obsidian there as well and then continue with the Smalty. Okay, so I've been working, but my progress has been hindered somewhat by my little baby Buttons, who's extremely sooky today. So you can see that I've completely surrounded my crystal focal point with the black Smalty, bringing in these beautiful pieces of obsidian. I ended up putting in 3, and I think they just combine beautifully with that Smalty, and they don't really hinder the andamento, they flow with it, which is beautiful. Now you come to the point where you go, well, what do I do next? So now it's a matter of sort of having a look at the materials that you have laid out around you and seeing if there's anything that might feel right or look good going in next. So I could think about putting in some of this lepidolite, but I would probably cut it up, and maybe the color's not quite right so close to the crystal. I could start putting in some more obsidian, and that might be nice, because I want to contrast to the sort of man-made straight pieces of this smalty. What else could I do? I could try some crystal chips, the amethyst crystal chips. They could look good. I've also got some little pieces of this Super 7 crystal, just 7 crystals mixed together, grow together. Oh, look at that. That little tumble stone just slides in absolutely perfectly there. And that's how I often work. I just try things, and if I feel this really lovely physical connection, when I look at it, it's usually a beautiful visual connection as well. So that's what I'm going to go with next. I'm popping in the Super 7. I might try another Super 7 to sort of balance that one out somewhere on the other side. Oh yeah, that one's clunking in nicely there too. Look at that. And maybe I'll get another piece and try it down here. Then I will go further with the black, with just the black, and see what happens as that kind of story emerges. My next step with this is to expand the volume of materials, and I want to start by putting in some more obsidian. So like I did before, I can play around with some of these flakes to find ones that just kind of, look how beautifully that just settles in there, so I feel like it belongs there. But I can also cut it. Even though it's natural material and it's a crystal, it's actually glass because it's rapidly cooled lava, so it's volcanic glass. So you can actually cut it with your wheel nippers, but you have to have a piece that's thin enough to get your nippers in. So if it's a bit fat like that, what you could do is wrap it in a soft cloth, get down on a cement or concrete floor and give it a tap with a hammer, and little pieces like this will probably splinter off. Once you get pieces that are thin enough, you can actually get your wheel nippers in and break it just like you do regular glass. So I might actually create some pieces from the obsidian. So instead of doing just random pieces like these flakes, I can continue with some more classical mosaic shapes and do some more work with the andamento. I also like to think ahead. So as I'm putting in these obsidian pieces, I'm also thinking, well, what might come after that? And I would probably want to bring in a bit more color. So I might start thinking about these pieces of lepidolite, which are beautiful, aren't they? And I want to use the inside, which is called the ribbon. With this, I would cut with a tile nipper. Now, remember when we're working with crystals, it's not like man-made materials that will go in the direction that you want. They will just kind of split where they were formed. But you can see that's not a straight cut as such, but it's got this beautiful texture inside. And I think that might suit, you know, really nicely against the obsidian and moving out with that. So I'd probably try to split some more off like this and break some pieces and put it with the ribbon up going like that. I might cut it down into smaller pieces. So we'll do some work with the lepidolite as well. So as you can see, it's starting to take shape. It's looking really beautiful. A lot of undulations, different textures, catching the light in different ways. And something's emerging in this little pocket over here. I'm starting to put in some, almost a little mini focal point here, but creating it rather than with one piece. So I'm putting a dob of glue in there. And then into that, I'm sliding these pointy pieces of obsidian, which are going in really nicely and creating sort of a textured look where things are sort of standing a little bit proud. I think that looks really nice. Now I've decided it needs a bit more structure rather than just keeping going with this freeform nature. So I'm running a line of Smalty around a little bit further out from where I finished the work, and then I'll backfill later. Just so it doesn't become one stiff line, I'm popping in these, maybe occasionally just a piece of obsidian that sort of flows a little bit, and then you can tuck the piece of Smalty underneath, just to break that line a little bit. Now you can see I've run that ring of Smalty around to bring it together, but I have popped some pieces of obsidian here and there to break up the line. And now it's time to bring in these crystal chips, I feel. These are, we do sell these at Artopia. They do come and go with the stock. They're amethysts. They're really great for filling in. So you can see I've just popped one in just in here to fill up that little gap there. And I'm going to pop a few in where I feel they look nice. I'm being selective about the colour with them because amethyst does come in many different colours, and the chips are made from all the leftover bits. So you've got some like really pale bits and some really darker bits. So I'm going to be picking out the colours of these amethysts that sort of blend in nicely with this palette that I've created here. And I'm also going to backfill in these gaps with some more bits of obsidian. Here and there you might want to call on this wonderful glue. It's so versatile because it dries clear. We do sell it at Artopia. You can see I've gone a bit crazy with it here and it's splurted out everywhere. But I was more meaning just to get a little bit of glue in that channel there because the glue had gone a little bit hard. So rather than putting in some more of this adhesive, which might bulk it out too much, you can just pop a bit of the prep in just to make it a bit more sticky. I want to also show you the great thing about obsidian. You can get these little thin flakes that usually sort of come off when you start cutting it. And there's this little thin gap here, and that's perfect for just putting in a piece of obsidian, but not putting it in flat, just putting it in upright. See that? So you can play with levels and direction of the pieces. Actually, I think that needs to go in the other way around. So can you see how that I've slid that in a vertical position? It just fills that cavity nicely, but it also adds something interesting. Once that prep multi-use adhesive dries, it'll be completely clear, so you won't see it at all. You also need to be a bit careful when you do use the obsidian chips that come on the string, because they do have that hole. So you might not want that hole to be visible. So I like to slide them in and just make sure that the hole is like either down or, in this case, the hole's on the side. So you don't see it because it's hidden between those two pieces there. Now I've completely enclosed that central area, and I have to make a decision about what I do with the rest of this board. So I'd like to introduce you to another crystal that we have at Artopia. This is a wonderful mix that I got hold of. It's quite unique, and it's a mix of black tourmaline, that's these kind of pieces, with this striation up and down, that's the crystal formation, and there's little bits of that in there. And also the sparkly stuff is mica, broken up pieces of mica, which is a different crystal. And so this makes a nice kind of filler. I've also got, you know, some of the obsidian chips here, the really small bits that I can mix with this as well. So what I want to do really is just fill this area with that kind of sprinkly effect, so I don't make it too heavy. And I will also pop into that some of the lepidolite and some of the amethyst chips that we've worked with, and potentially even maybe a couple of the Super 7s. So what we have to do first is colour the board black. So instead of doing a full glue coverage, what you do is you just get your glue and you kind of smear it onto the board. I would recommend you use gloves, but I'm just using my finger at the moment and then cleaning it really quickly off. So you can see how I've coloured the board rather than made a glue bed, because all we really want is to just make that board invisible. And really we're just going to use now the Prep Multi-Use Adhesive for the actual adhesion. So give your hands a good clean, because it's important to keep you know, clean fingers so you don't transfer the coloured glue elsewhere. Now what I'm going to do is put a bit of multi-use adhesive here and spread it around. And you only need like a thick membrane like that. And then I'm going to get some of this black tourmaline mix with mica and sprinkle it like that, covering the glue. It's a really great filler, and I think it'll complement that quite nicely. I am going to take out the long pieces of tourmaline because to me they break the flow a little bit, and I'm going to pop in some of these amethyst chips because they are picking up on the purple in the main body there and just giving it a little bit of a different look. I might also pop in some obsidian flakes that are really the byproduct of the obsidian when you break it up. So don't ever throw any of those chips away. They can all be used beautifully as like a filler rather than you know, a full mosaic. So I kind of want to combine that a bit more. So I can put a bit of prep on top of the bits I've already made. I can pop a little bit of obsidian on there, and don't forget this prep adhesive does dry clear so you don't see it afterwards. So it's really great glue to use for this kind of thing. And because we've coloured the board, it doesn't really matter if there's little gaps because you won't see it. So I'll just keep doing that around the whole board now, with popping in a little few focal points, either a big piece of obsidian, some of these crystal chips, or if I think they're going to look nice and small enough, I might put in a piece of Super 7 like I did here, because I think that could look quite nice. Maybe one in each corner, but not exactly in the corner. I'll just have them a little bit asymmetrical. That sort of nestles in nicely there. So I'll keep going with that work and show you when I'm done. Okay, so now you can see I've completed all the work, and some of the Prep Multi adhesive is still white because it's fresh, and that will dry clear, so it'll look a little bit different. So now what you do is you lift it up and have a bit of a look at it. Some of that sprinkly stuff will fall off. Have a good look at it and see if there's anything there now that you're looking at it face forward that's standing out for you. You can also take a photo of it and look at it in the camera, because that will also give you a truer look. Now, something that's standing out for me is this line here, as I feel that breaks the andamento, the flow around that central focal point. The andamento isn't actually incorrect because that line does follow that, but the problem is that part of the focal point is quite straight. Now, what you can do is dig it all out and do something else, or the beaut thing about using flakes of obsidian is we can do a little trick here, and we can have a look through our flakes of obsidian and find something that might just sit nicely on there. So let's take a look at these pieces and what we could do here. So you can actually like find something that sits across that gap, that crack, sorry, that join that looks a bit clunky. Something like that perhaps might work. Or maybe this one. Let's try it this way. That's quite nice. I like that, and I like the way the Super 7 crystal is sort of hidden underneath there. So I'm going to glue that one on with the Prep Multi-Use adhesive. Just put a blob of it there, and then add that there, and once again that will dry clear. So it kind of, you know, it hides that flaw, but it also adds a little bit more interest. And then you know, you can just put your eye across all this sort of random infill that we've done there and flick out anything that's not quite right. Sometimes you get like a browny bit in this mica mix. It might be a bit too brown or something like that that's a bit too straight. Just kind of fiddle around with it with your pointy tool until you're happy with it. And you can see nestled in there, we've got some Super 7, we've got some obsidian chips, and we've got some other pieces of obsidian. Now, I wasn't going to put any of the larger pieces of tourmaline in, but that just kind of fell there and clunked nicely against that Super 7 crystal, and I really liked it, so I left it there. So that's our completed mosaic, and I'm just going to run through with you now the crystals that we have used and talk about what is available at Artopia. So let me have a look at what we've got. So first of all, we start with a focal point. Now that's the Moroccan blush amethyst, and sometimes we have these and sometimes we don't. You might choose a different kind of focal point to do for your mosaic. You might choose a blue focal point, and then the smelty and other crystals that you choose to go around it would be a completely different family. So these are sometimes available. This particular one is $12. Then I've used a little bit of lepidolite, which we sell to you guys for $2 a piece or 10 for 15, which is a really good price because on our market store we sell them for $4 a piece. We have the strings of crystal chips, this one being amethyst, and they we have usually between $6 or $8 depending on the supplier I've managed to get them from. This is the Super 7 crystal, which is really unusual, so that, you know, when all that's gone we might not have that one again. $5 for 50 grams. Of course, the wonderful obsidian, so versatile, a wonderful crystal to have in your stash, and it's quite inexpensive, $5 for 100 grams, so we can weigh out what you need. And then what I brought in towards the end, this wonderful tourmaline and mica mix, which again is an unusual mix to have. You won't find this anywhere else. It's only $5 for 100 grams. So if you don't find these items on our website at www.artopiaspirit.com, which you probably won't because they come and go so frequently, I don't tend to list them on the website. What you need to do is just send me a message or an email and ask about any of these things or any other crystals that might work for your particular mosaic, and we can send you photos, send you videos. You can choose your own, we can weigh them for you, we can guide you as to what works and what doesn't work. And so I hope you do call on us at Artopia so we can help you with beautiful crystal mosaics mixed with other materials, in which case this is smelty, and you'll find that on the websites available. Our one in Australia is Mosaic Bazaar or Smelty Australia. So have fun with your crystal mosaics, everyone.